save this for later. Yeah. All right. So hope. Medication or any, is there any health consideration that you have for them? And the farmer is like, the black one or the white one? This journalist is like, okay, fine, the black one. So the black one has a special vet, and he comes to visit every so often. All right, and the white one? Well, the white one has this special vet who comes to visit every so often. Now the journalist got irritated as I hear myself in surround sound. So the journalist is like, why are you asking me, the black one or the white one, if you're just going to give me the same answers for each of them? And the farmer is like, hey, calm down, my friend, calm down. It's because the black one is mine. The journalist is like, oh, okay. And the white one? It's also mine. I think we're ready with the feed, because I can hear myself from a different country. I just keep going as it gets set up. I'm hearing myself in surround sound. All right.
The impacts of climate change. And I had mentioned that, climate education, it's important because it will help people understand and address the impacts of climate crisis. as well as empowering them with knowledge, skills, and values and attitudes needed to act as agents of change. And the international community, as well as even our own government, is recognizing the importance of climate change education, particularly it's actually even mentioned in our own national determined contribution, which is our agenda for addressing the impacts of climate change in the country. And at UNESCO, who is a partner with ACTS, and we have actually implemented several projects with them, UNESCO, we do have a program called Education for Sustainable Development, which is a program that gives learners of all ages the knowledge, skills, and values to address interconnected global challenges, including climate change, loss of biodiversity, and sustainable use of resources and inequalities. So within this Education for Sustainable Development, we have 5 priority areas. One is advancing policy, second is transforming learning and environments, third is building capacities of educators, fourth is empowering and mobilizing youth, and fifth is accelerating local actions. Of particular interest for today, I'll talk about transforming learning environments. And for this, UNESCO works to actually make climate-ready learning environments. So we do develop guidelines for schools on climate actions from different levels, primary, secondary, all the way to university, as well as we develop guidelines for accelerating solutions through education, training, and public awareness. The other component on climate change education we talk is about disaster risk reduction. And we do prepare and actually offer training on how to stay safe and be prepared, different guides for students, teachers, and the parents. As well as I mentioned, we build capacity of those different community people. So UNESCO, we have this climate change education program. And as I told you, it helps people understand the impacts of global warming and actually increases what we call climate literacy among young people. And we do produce and share knowledge, provide guidance, policy, and technical support to its member states. And as well as we also mobilize action on climate change through a series of monthly conversations on climate change for social transformation. So through this academy, we'll also be probably holding monthly conversations on climate change education. However, not only do we think about schools, we also think about the community. How do we engage the community? We have a whole school approach that has multiple benefits, whereas schools become resilient and self-reliant for nutrition. Communities also benefit from income generation as well as local environment. So what are some of the things when we talk about climate and education partners? We do work with county and national governments, academics and research partners, and through this we have different approaches or different actions we engage with. So for county and national governments who have the responsibility for the education sector, we try to make education systems climate smart, including mainstreaming climate education consideration across climate education sectors, as well as ensuring that there is allocation of additional financing for climate education. As you know, particularly in Kenya, actually including any issue within the curriculum can take a long time, going through the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development or through the Council of University Education and all that, but we are working towards at least ensuring that climate education is integrated through our curriculum. And then we also working towards providing a seat for education stakeholders at climate change decision-making tables to identify meaningful opportunities to include education in the UNFCCC processes, as well as including those through the NDCs and the national adaptation plans. Something that is new currently is we're trying to consider developing sector-specific education national adaptation plans. For the academics as a critical stakeholders, we actually work with them to continue strengthening the evidence base by conducting research to understand what works to address climate change in and through education. For civil societies who are mainly providing advocacy and fighting for climate change actions, We do mobilize young people to advance climate solutions in their homes, schools, and communities. And we also advocate for climate smart education system, and then implement projects in line with pathways for change, and as well as pioneering innovations. For private sector and other philanthropists, we actually worked with them to fund programs and research to strengthen innovation, action, and knowledge towards climate smart education systems. So in brief, that is what UNESCO is doing, and we are actually quite excited for the launch of this Arts Pathways Academy. As I know, we do have several programs that we'll be providing through these academies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyasimi. Oh, is my okay? My voice is back here now, and we'll be hearing again from another partner. That's a representative from the African Development Bank, and in that regard, I'd like to invite Winnie Mutai, who is the climate change finance expert in that's reaccreditation and readiness, and this is in the climate change and green growth department at the African Development Bank. Please put your hands together as we welcome Winnie Mutai. You can keep the hand claps until it's a long distance.
Hi, good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure meeting you on behalf of my colleague. I think he was to join you, but I had to represent him. He's away on leave and will be away for quite some time. So I lead the readiness and reaccreditation. So I really work for the Green Climate Fund division within the bank. And so when it comes to readiness, which is what this particular, what we call training module, and what I can see the academy is geared towards more of readiness programs, and which is ideally just providing tools for strengthening capacity building. So when it comes to readiness, and what we work within the bank is readiness ideally is how to strengthen the capacity, and in terms of knowledge and in terms of tools to countries when it comes to development of either proposals or programs geared towards climate financing. Now this is our huge challenge, and I can tell you every day we receive this kind of request in terms of how do we design this kind of modules. And so last year on December, I was able to convene what we call direct access entities convening in Cote d'Ivoire in our headquarters, and basically it was a 3-day workshop, and I was training and taking different representatives from ministries of various countries on just how to be able to understand the concept of sustainable financing. Now what was really interesting to me, and why I find the academy may be very timely for me, is we have a gap in 3 areas, and I'm glad that maybe the speakers that came before me were able to highlight, but I'm going to highlight 3 particular areas that we struggled, and now we are really trying to build capacity. Number 1, it's the area of climate governance, how that looks like for people undertaking issues within climate financing. So the area of climate governance, that is from management, accountability structures, processes and systems that would accrue very effective climate programs and implementation of projects. That's a really big gap that we are really trying to fill, and maybe I hope the academy tries in its way to be able to hold that. The second one is sustainability financing, and that's a really huge gap that we face. And I can tell you, even now, every day, the only request that comes to my desk is the issue of sustainable financing. Where do we get the resources? How do we get the resources? How do we utilize? How do we measure? How do we create impact? So that's another huge gap that if people, and one of the honest conversations I had with these technical people from various ministries within the continent, they were around 44, so representing 44 countries, and one of the honest conversations they were able to tell me is sometimes the issue is not that they can't access funding. Sometimes it's the understanding of how to access that funding that's the biggest challenge for them. They're willing to put the work, but the understanding is not there. And no one is willing to take the time to train them. So this is really timely, and I can tell you governments will be your first clients. It's a really huge struggle that we see every day. The other thing is maybe I would want to mention, and so this happened like I think 4 weeks ago. I was at the East African community, and we had various ministers from the East Africa. So it was the ministers of finance, specifically Ministry of Finance, and some of them ministers of environment. And so we had a 4-day workshop and convening, and some of them were PSs, and we were taking them through what are the opportunities of climate funds that they could leverage on. So they were only ministers, and I remember one particular minister mentioned to me, sometimes one of the biggest challenges they face is how to quantify the amount they need and how to showcase justification that with this particular amount of that they require, it would create this particular impact. Sometimes it's very hard to actualize impact when it comes to climate programs. And so that's another area you could look at. And this is an area they really, really struggle in. And the other thing is to quantify the impact of a dollar in terms of any donor who tries to be able to fund them. So these were like honest conversations we had with them for 3 days. The other challenge they mentioned to me is the evolving nature of climate funds. And I'm going to maybe highlight, and that's something you all maybe could focus. So there's a reform currently ongoing when it comes to the climate governance structure, and this is in 2 phases: the climate governance and the climate architecture, the climate finance architecture. And what we mean by the climate finance architecture, we are looking at the global funds when it comes to assessing climate funds. So this is the GEF, the GCF, the adaptation fund, and there are around 6, I think. I've just forgotten maybe 2. And so the US Treasury sent us a note in terms of the kind of reforms they would be suggesting when it comes to the climate funding architecture, and this will be shared ahead of COP28. So this is something interesting you could look out in terms of how to ensure that even as we design this particular school or academia, how do we ensure we leave a room for evolution? And this is always the hardest part when it comes to designing programs, that you have a window and a room that you allow arising matters and arising changes, such as what we are experiencing currently, to inform the design of this particular tool. Because how effective a program is really depends on how dynamic and you can be to the changes that are occurring within the environment. So that is in the aspect of sustainable financing. The other thing would be climate justice, and this is very interesting for me. So the climate justice is very interesting because it's not really a topic that people want to talk about really a lot, and those people who talk about beat around the bush about it. But when you think about it, we don't have a problem, I think, from where I see it, there's a lot of funding when it comes to climate. The always hardest part is how to assess it. But the other question, when you pin it down, is how do we ensure accountability measures, accountability structures? And this is where the area of climate justice comes. And I remember, so around on May, for 10 to 15 days, I spent my time at the Yale University School of Environmental Studies. And so I had a cohort of around 30 students that I had been invited who come for summer school programs. And so I was supposed to take them through climate, how they could understand the climate financing structure. And so one of the topics that she's called Professor Dosita, and she heads the climate school of Yale, and she told me, why don't you take them through climate justice programs? And so I asked her, why is it important for you guys to understand climate justice program? Because from the other end, and one of the interesting things that came out for me is if we must be really careful that we might end up lobbying, but we don't have people who are going to call out in functionality within the systems. And so what we have is everyone is paying attention to climate issues, but no one is paying attention to how effective are the structure and system of governance. And so climate justice is really nice, and we shouldn't really let it to CSOs as always. And this is the other conversation. And so last year we had a meeting with CSOs, and this was the first conference the bank ever held with CSOs. And Pakja, I think, was the one leading, because I was part of the committee and I could see them lobbying a lot of issues. But then I began saying, but why is it only Pakja coming and speaking out? Why don't we have education institutions coming out and speaking about climate justice program? And so I'm really, really happy, and that's an area that we are seeing a lot of evolving funding coming to, but also a need that is required. So maybe those three areas out of my experience, but as I went, I'm very careful. I knew I have 3 to 5 minutes. So there's something about designing programs, whether internally or externally, that you need to be careful about. So 3 things. You need to have an idea how this program can be assessed. So assess is something that we need to communicate clearly. How do we plan for people to assess the program? And so assess could be in various forms. So there's assess, quality, and affordability. So those are the 3 areas that determines the effectiveness of a delivery program, whatever way and angle you look at it. So it would be really important that you could design a very good program, but if you miss to design quality, and what I can see, the quality has been met here very well. So the question is affordability and accessibility. This could really impact hugely on how we are able to see the effectiveness of this program. So we need to take care of that. And as I finish, maybe on my own understanding about the program, is a few things also we need to take care to ensure that this program meets the evolving needs. So number one, maybe it's time to look at what is the concept of green economy and labor market assessments when it comes to this program. So this is to ensure that this particular program has an idea of what the labor market wants and needs. So maybe the concept of green economy and labor market assessment should be an interesting thing. The other thing would be what are the kind of environmental sectors and green jobs that this particular program could be targeting? And that's something you should see. So we need to look at this program at the end of it serving the labor market. So because that's the only way it's going to be effective. The people coming to take it are because they're going to impact a particular section of the labor market. And so I'm going to take you through the ILO. So there's an ILO guide and training toolkit when it comes to climate financing and labor market. So you could look at it. I could perhaps share the link and look at the models and theory, and we use it at the bank when we are designing these particular modules and trainings internally for the bank. The other 4th area that I forgot, and maybe it's something you could add. So we as a staff in the bank were able to put maybe 1 month of our time to study, and we were taken through how to build climate resilient infrastructure. Why? Because that's what governments are struggling about. So that's also something you could look about it. And then in an aspect of that, look at the model of what does private-public partnership mean when it comes to the context of climate resilient infrastructure, but also sustainable financing? This is an area that I'm just highlighting that you could be able to pick it out. But the interesting things, this is the only way you can measure how effective this program is. You only measure it by the areas of demand that it's needed. So this is the areas I've mentioned for me when I thought about it. How do we measure really the success and intrinsically of sustainable development goals in the context of how we are today and where we are today? We only measure it by meeting the gap and the demands of the areas I have just highlighted. So with that, I hope that this becomes then the training that leads to a very project-based training, as one of the leaders mentioned, that we offer that, but 2, we also offer a sound base of evidence-based training. That these particular areas that I have just highlighted could be the areas that they give a sounding effect and a sounding thoughtful processes when it comes to evidence-based training. And so I really hope that this begins an amazing journey, and congratulations to all of you, and I look forward to a great partnership ahead. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. As in, just what you said is enough for 3 modules alone. That's an education. We're launching an academy, but that in itself was an education, at least for me. I don't know if I'm speaking for anyone else here. The ones who felt that, yes, you join me in the corner, we'll exchange notes. I've taken quite a few. We continue to hear from the partners, and hey, in line with just some of the things we've learned. Now I want to hear what we'd call, I guess, the youth perspective from the African Youth Commission. We're talking about someone who possesses 8 years experience in the implementation of climate change and environment, renewable and sustainable energy projects. This is the African Activists for Climate Justice Project Lead at AYC, the African Youth Commission. Kaduyu Michael. Once again, the hand clap can't just end there. I mean, I know times are tough, but we can afford a few more claps.
Thank you so much. I think you are so far my favorite MC. This kind of introduction should be... Isn't it? My friend. For those who know me, I'm a bit unorthodox. I don't follow procedures so much, but I'll try today. So if you look at the program, I'm also meant to encourage you to subscribe and pay for this program. But at the same time, I need to tell you why it is important for this program to be led by the Africans themselves at the end of the day. Just a simple question: who read the IPCC report, the current one? I'm not surprised by the hands that are being raised. The other tables, please. Okay, who knew that there's an IPCC report that was launched? Okay. Philip, stop hiding. Oh, he's left. Okay. My point is, if you look at the IPCC report and you go to the research or the funding that comes for research for Africa, it's very minimal. And the reason behind it, or the thing that I don't subscribe to, is that there are very few African scientists or experts who do well-founded or well-grounded research to warrant being in the IPCC reports. But at the same time, there's the need to ensure that at least the African scientists or the experts within that are really doing a lot of research. Their work is really published in journals that are really, we call them peer-reviewed journals. And to subscribe to a peer-reviewed journal, for your article to appear, it's really expensive. There are some peer-reviewed journals that are, for you to get your article to be published, it's almost 2,500 USD. And if you're an expert, you've done a lot of research, you've put in your effort, you put in, and again you're expected to pay for the work that it's expected to help in trying to solve these issues of climate change, then it beats logic, right? So for me, one thing that I am happy about that ACT is doing, Dr. Kilelo and Dr. Winston Ojeng have given you exactly what ACT is doing. And as African Youth Commission, we are so happy because we know that there has been an emerging trend whereby there are a lot of models or training modules that are really encouraging people to subscribe, also to learn. Your background may not be research, or you may not be a negotiator, or you may not be a climate modeler, but these training modules at least help you to give you direction or give you traction of how to engage in this thing. So I just wanted to start with that by saying that it is really important to know that there's a gap in terms of African scientists, and also the publishing their paper in a well-respected journals, but there is research that is going on in Africa. So how do we bridge that gap? you will help me answer that. But just to say that we all know that under the climate change, we have three things that are enabling factors that can help us bridge the gap on climate change, and that is technology transfer, climate finance, and capacity building. And if you look at the programs that ACT is doing, technology transfer is taken care of, because you heard about the digital economy that was being taken care of. The program that we are trying to launch today helps cover on issue of capacity building. Should you subscribe to it? Then on matters of climate finance, Winnie has just mentioned what the AFDB is doing. But at the same time, I think we need to start challenging the climate finance narrative, because the entire architecture is skewed. If you talk to a climate finance expert, money is meant to be flowing from somewhere to Africa to come and help us, isn't it? If you say yes, I'll know we are together. Okay. But so far, the thing has not worked. Ever since climate finance was launched, I don't know which year, we have stuck to the dream of 100 billion USD that was promised in, was it Cancun or Copenhagen? To date, it was Copenhagen. To date, it is never materialized. We've not even reached halfway mark. But the problem is that we have potential that we are not exploiting. Like, for instance, how do we take care of our domestic climate finance needs? We are not quantifying that. There are a lot of actions that are being done by yourselves to try and respond to climate change, but we do not quantify that, or that is not recorded as climate finance. We need researchers, we need scientists to tell us the data, because there is a lot of climate finance that is really being utilized within our own countries internally that is not being recorded at the global level. So all we are interested in is what GCF is giving us, what Jeff Green Environmental Facility is giving us, what Adaptation Fund is giving us, what the Special Climate Finance Fund is giving us. All those things are what we mentioned, but we forget that there are things that we are taking care of internally. But as AYC, so what is AYC? Africa Youth Commission is a youth organization that was founded in 2017 in Addis Ababa. It is in 46 countries, with our headquarters being in the Gambia, but we have a regional office here in Kenya. And currently we are implementing a project called African Activists for Climate Justice. It's a project being implemented in South Africa, Mozambique, Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, and Senegal. And the purpose is to ensure that at the end of the 5 years of the project, at least we have Africans who are telling our own stories. We have a movement that has been built at the end of the day of African activists who are pushing our own narratives. And that is what we are pushing for at the end of the day. Finally, I just want to say that the model that is being launched today is one thing that is really clearly thought out, and is backed by an African entity that was founded by an African scientist and has built its reputation through research by Africans themselves. So I don't know what else I can say more when it comes to ACTS being the people that are really pushing or are launching this today as the godfathers of this. But I'll say that one thing that you should not doubt is the quality of work that comes out of ACTS. If you are not convinced of anything, just be happy. If you don't know the history of ACTS, maybe we can be told later. If you don't know the quality of work that they do, visit their website. Fiona has given us how you can access their online platforms. And for me, what stands out to associate with ACT is that whenever we see a lot of climate modules being launched and everything, majority of them are being launched from the global north. But we have our own entity that is African centered by researchers who've schooled in Africa, who've done research, who've had their work being reviewed by their own colleagues from here in Africa, and they can say confidently that this is the research that is needed by all of us, that can work for us because they have modeled it and they have seen results. For me, that's what I want to subscribe to as a young person, as a young climate change activist, or as a young climate expert. And for me, I want to ensure that the certificate that I get has that power, or has that, how do I say? When somebody sees it, when I go for an interview and I pull it, everybody remembers, oh, this is ACTS. They're the ones who are issuing this certificate from the module that is being done. So I want to challenge all of you, kindly. If you're not convinced about anything else, please. The program is trying to help you to be part. Not all of us can be staffs at ACTS, but at least the program helps you to be associated to ACTS. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Now, earlier we had, it was envisioned that we would have time to have, a nice panel session. See the lovely chairs that I put up for you, and all. But because of time, that may not be possible. However, you may have either questions or reactions that you want to share. So just write it down so that you don't forget. May give you a chance to at least react, or if there's some specific speaker you want to address a question to, then we'll give you that opportunity. But now we want to hear from someone. Remember earlier I'd mentioned my dad worked at ISIPE, and he was a research scientist. Well, this one previously worked as a research scientist that's in the field of energy, at the Kenya Industrial Research and Development Institute, with a vast experience in renewable energy technologies. But currently, this is the Resource Mobilization and Business Development Manager at the National Environmental Trust Fund, that is NETFund. And the principal responsibility of this next speaker is design and development of projects and mobilization of resources for project implementation. I am speaking, of course, about Crispin Omondi Onyango. You've never been introduced like that, just admit.
Thank you, Efesi. So I'm Crispin Omondi, not as big as Efesi is introducing. I'm here to represent my CEO, Mr. Samson Tonyok, who unfortunately could not be able to come. And just to give a brief comments from him. Number one, I was requested to basically introduce NETFund. I don't know how many have heard about NETFund before. NETFund. Okay. So we are a fund, a trust fund, under the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry. And our core mandate is to mobilize resources for environmental actions. And you know that environment is quite broad, and this cross-cuts climate change as well as forestry. And we work in collaboration with different partners, and this includes development partners, both global funds, multilateral and bilateral development partners, including the African Development Bank. We work closely with the CSOs, NGOs, the private sector, SMEs, and individuals. This said and done, our main focus areas are restoration, circular economy, waste management, of course falling under circularity, as well as air quality. I know that's an area that ACTS is also focusing on. And we are also looking at basically capacity building. And I think that is where I'd want to speak more about. So under our business development function, we have a training program that we run on a quarterly basis. So a series of trainings, and our trainings are basically focused on resource mobilization, designing and developing bankable projects, as well as projects management. And these trainings are done in collaboration with certified institutions. So currently we are working with the Kenya School of Governance, and with this we are running trainings that are focusing on building the capacities of county governments to access climate finance, as my colleague Winnie from the bank just noted. And we are also partnering with the Project Management Institute, this is the PMI, to offer certified trainings in projects management. And this is a training that targets the private sector, government institutions, and CSOs. And we are also working with the Kenya Association of Fundraising Professionals, and basically on offering training on resource mobilization. And the unique thing with our trainings is that they are not just desktop trainings. These are actually practical trainings that incorporate something that we call a donor marketplace. And this means that as we train you, we are basically looking at coming up with a product or an output that is sellable. So we would normally have a series of trainings that ends up with you pitching your projects to donors who actually have funding opportunities. So far, we've been able to run around 9 trainings, and we had the following development partners on board: the African Development Bank, who've been very supportive through the African Climate Change Fund. We've had the World Bank through the Climate Investment Funds. We have Danida, we have the Italians, whom we are starting a new program with. We have the GCF and the GEF that Winnie also mentioned. We have the United Nations, different agencies, but more so UNDP, and we also have USAID. And out of our trainings, we've actually been able to have success stories of actual trainees or trainee institutions that have had their programs funded. We also offer customized trainings to different institutions, and this could be trainings beyond environment, beyond climate change, and beyond forestry. We also have trainings that just purely focus on boards and executives. We realized from experience that to successfully secure resources, the success starts from the board and the executives. If they don't understand their roles in supporting this, then ideally the technical teams will struggle. So basically why there is need to set aside adequate resources to support the technical teams. And we've also have customized trainings in cooperation with development partners. So currently, I'd like to just mention that we have secured some funds from the Climate Investment Funds, and this is through the World Bank. And we'll be inviting acts because starting from the month of August, we'll be designing an investment plan for the country. And the investment plan is basically your big business plan for the country, your wish list that wishes to be funded. We have secured a window of 34 billion Kenyan shillings, and this can be for different areas. So Dr. Joel will be looking forward to that. So basically speaking, I personally see potential areas of partnership and collaboration between NetFund and ACTS, especially on this academy. I'd like to officially note that we are open for an official meeting and sitting, so that instead of running things differently and ad hocly, we can actually do one synergistic program. So thank you. That's it from us.
Thank you very much, Crispin. So we are coming pretty much to the close of. Actually, that's the close of the formal, speeches and presentations. If you do have something that you'd like addressed, or maybe there's a question you have, or even a reaction, now is a good time for that. I'll come around with the microphone, and you can either ask your question, or does anyone have something that they'd like to say in reaction, or out of curiosity about a particular aspect of what you've heard and seen today? In which case, I would like to just recognize the few organizations actually. You've just heard from Crispin from NetFund. I want to Actually, maybe this is just my own. Just want to thank you for being generous with the information that you've given us today. Winnie, that was, for me, I think, Winnie, I'll just talk to you afterwards, because, wow. Yes, there are a lot of really amazing notes here. So for African Development Bank, African Youth Commission, AYC, Net Fund, UNESCO, want to recognize you and thank you for your partnership, and also for standing behind the visionaries of APA. And would also like to recognize SBC. Is there a representative who was, yes? Joel would like you to say a few words, or in fact, Joel will come, and because there are a lot of partners who have been with him on this journey, and would like to really recognize you.
Actually, starting the other way around. So the academy in itself has had a lot of support. There are different organizations in the room that have given different levels of support, apart from the ACTS team. And I just wanted to say thank you and recognize these different organizations. I know in online we have the team from EFD, the Ethiopia Forest Development. Dr. Zenebe, if you're there, and if you wanted to say a few things, I know we are running out of time, but just to say thank you from the EFD for the continued support, and we'll always be coming back to you for continuous conversation. Also, we have the University of Zimbabwe, worked with us through the last 3 years in different contexts in training and capacity building, and I want to appreciate them as well as part of this conversation. We also have recently added SBC, Sustainable Business Consulting, from the private sector side of things, SME, really pushing the sustainability agenda, and knowing that the institution, the academy also focuses on that. So the SBC team, Santeni, for your in-kind and also cash support. Then we also have the 2 other colleagues. I think we have the Praise Company, who is also in the room. Praise Company has been in the forefront, and probably they'll be reaching out for more to the partners in different regards for telling you more about the academy. And of course, you have BrandSpark. BrandSpark has been also very instrumental in making sure that this launch happens in blue and orange. I think when you asked blue and orange as colors, it was very useful for us. And you see the tables are either blue or orange. Maybe we should play a blue or orange game. But those are brand colors that we like to be identified with. I can't go without mentioning, of course, the ACTS Governing Council that has already also been mentioned, and the ACTS team. Maybe it's useful to also recognize the actual ACTS team, people who've made this happen. Maureen at the back of the room, wave for us and do a little dance for this initiative. We have Martin at the back, a little dance from you. We have Elizabeth, who has also been very instrumental for making this happen. We have Fiona, who's also been very supportive, and the entire ACTS collective for being part of this useful session, but also the academy and seeing it through. So just to make the speeches less, I'll hand over back to you, FSC. Thank you.
And as you hand over back to me, I invite someone for another speech. But it's actually pretty much the kind of coming to the conclusion. Those are many C's. Coming to the conclusion, yes, of the formal session. You will, of course, be able to interact, on just on the side. You want to talk to someone about whether it's partnership opportunities or engagement in any way, that opportunity is still available. And of course, there's still breakfast, so you can have that over something to eat. But right now, what I want to do is introduce you to someone who holds not 1, not 2, but 3 patents, and also has 3 others that are in review. Wait. How many of you have patents? The closest we have to something spelled like that is parents, or patent 3. Then this is someone who has a PhD in computer science from the Technical University of Kenya. Heads the Digital Economic Program at ACTS. That's African Center for Technology Studies. That's why we're here. This doctor is a senior research fellow, and you've heard him speak already before. And of course, as he spoke, he emphasized a lot on AI, because that's not only an area of passion, but it's also an area in which he holds a patent. So please put your hands together as you welcome back again Dr. Winston Ojenge. Yes, this ndio tuko. So
you know, that's really part of the movie role. There's no such person. That's a fictitious continuation of my friend here. When these things are spoken, they look so big, but when you come down to the technical of it, you realize it's really the standard stuff. I was invited to offer, I think, closing words on behalf of the executive director for the Center, ACTS, Professor Tom Ogada, who had to go away to attend to an urgent assignment, and therefore regretfully is not able to be part of this. So I will just go through this very quickly, just to remind ourselves what was spoken here, because really it's the big picture that we are all coming out with here. So within this conversation we have had from the various discipline areas or knowledge areas, what is the big thing that we are taking away from today? We know that Joel came in and introduced his baby, and he mentioned the three concerns that the Academy will be addressing, that is climate change, then also convene international discourses around climate change, and then training. And then Catherine, who is part of our GC, who is part of the program committee and the governing committee, then also mentioned about I think I'm mixing issues. Catherine, who's my colleague, who is heading the agricultural, food security and nutrition program, talked about how the program is going to exploit this platform, and she said that it's going to certainly promote what her main concern has been, that is agri-food system, through training, and this training would be demand driven and would also be project based. And I think that's a very powerful way to address our food systems. Then of course Winston came in and talked about how their program, which is digital economy, is then going to host their training modules in AI, and also insisted that it would be project-based, which seems to be very powerful. Fiona came and told us how to register, and she talked about ACTS. Your focus, you should be on the ACTS website, and also speak to our staff even in these last few minutes before we all get away. UNESCO, Dr. Jasimi Mary of UNESCO, pointed out the need for climate change education and its impact on the climate change itself, and mentioned that a very important thing, that Africa contributes less than 1% to the emissive impact on our environment. That is the emissions that are coming out that are killing our environment, and yet it's reaping some of the biggest impacts, ill impacts, and therefore we need to focus as Africans on how to enable or support the rest of the world in mitigating this. Then Winnie Mutai from African Development Bank pointed us to how we can access funds from them. And one thing that I picked out, which to me is very important, is that she mentioned some of the packages and some of their focus areas that I would certainly be reaching out to them about how to get the money from them. Thank you very much, Winnie, for telling us this. Then African Youth Commission, that is Kaduyu, Michael. Kaduyu, What do you like? Is it wine or tea, so that I can see how to budget for this next month? Because you really made my day by saying one statement, that the academy is driven by indigenous African players, researchers, and founder. And that founder actually has a legacy foundation after him, named after him, and it would be nice for us to see how to also load that legacy foundation onto these activities that we are carrying out here. Then Crispin Omondi then came after a serious movie role that was better than even mine, and talked about the capacity building opportunities. And he mentioned one very nice thing, which also made my day, my morning, that the World Bank has given them 34 billion Kenya shillings. So Joel, let's see how we can get part of this money, please. That's really lovely. So you can see what the big picture is. What do we say? We say that therefore it is upon each one of us to find how we can focus and exploit this, because it seems all of us need the academy. But more so, it's the center and the virtual academy drivers, that is Joel, who then needs to see how to put all of us together, because we have already given detail of our needs and some of the focus areas of our activities, so that he can consolidate the big picture and how to converge us with our interests onto the virtual academy. So on behalf of the executive director for Center, I really show gratitude for your being here. Your presence has made our day and has kicked off this academy in the right gear. And thank you very much. And it would be nice to see you again in a more concerted set of activities around the academy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, there's just one more, but this one is online, and it's from the lead of the Climate Change Directorate in the Ethiopia Forest Development, that's EFD, and Dr. Zenebe is online. If we're ready to allow Dr. Zenebe to speak. Dr. Zenebe, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. It is nice. Is that audible?
Yes. Go ahead. You had you had something to say. Yes.
Thank you. I'm Zenebe Makonnen from Ethiopian Forestry Development, Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. I'm very happy to be involved in this launch of the Virtual Academy of Acts. As you know, currently climate change is a critical issue, global context, as well as in Africa, particularly the African continent is critically affected by climate change. So building this access pathway is, we are collaborating each other. Climate change needs a collaboration among countries, particularly we Africans need to collaborate and act on climate change in order to save our communities and our people. So Access Pathway is an initiative to strengthen capacity building among African countries. It is a good initiative. Last year we have been working together in the CAPSET project, and now the opening and the launching of this virtual academy is also very important to capacitate African scientists, because there is a capacity gap, a communication gap in Africa to share climate change issues. The main thing is climate needs collaboration and the communication of each other among African countries, so we can collaborate, strengthen capacity building in order to adapt climate change, which is a critical issue for African development, and making collaboration among institutions like we made last year with our institution and the CAPSET we have given several trainings for professional and experts so that they are learned about climate change a lot, so that they are capacitating themselves, the professional who are taking the training courses last year and applying into practical action in their individual institutions. So building capacity, strengthening on this climate change issue, I think the launching of this virtual academy is very important to strengthen our cooperation and strengthen cooperation among African countries. And I'm very happy for the launch of this virtual academy. And I hope we will strongly work together in the future. And thank you very much for your invitation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zenebe. And now as we come to the conclusion of this, you've heard the word or the phrase climate change quite a bit. And every part where a speaker or someone who's made a presentation has mentioned the word gap, that's an opportunity. So there's, whether it's for capacity building or even a module or a course, because today it's all about launching an academy that offers training of professionals, courses, executive courses, self-paced learning, so that those of us who prefer to take things at a certain pace, you know what to do with that. Bespoke learning for people who have experienced anything bespoke, you know how important that is. And summer schools. And all this is in collaboration with partners, with visionaries, with people who actually believe in taking that step, because we have everything that we need. We have everything that it takes. And so to bring this here, to bring us here, and the reason we are here today, we'd like to say a big thank you to all the members, all the staff, all the partners of ACTS. Actually, since you will be interacting with them afterwards, anyone who is affiliated directly to ACTS, please just wave your hand so that, yes, you can, yes. They're waiting for Joel to raise his hands first. All right, you can interact with them afterwards, but we do want to extend our gratitude to you for allowing us to be a part of this vision, allowing us to share in it, and also thank you for breakfast. Yeah, we culturally you have to thank people for food when they've given it to you, and thank you for joining us this morning, for taking time out to come here and join us as observers, listeners, partners, and advisors in whatever capacity you may have joined us this morning. We say a big thank you. My name is Yafesi Musoke, and if you want me to do a movie trailer version for you, just so that you be entering rooms, yeah, see me on the side over there. But I've been your MC. Thank you so much for tolerating me, Dr. Ojenge, and for having me here with you. Have a wonderful morning. Please don't rush away. There's still food and there's beverages on the side. But thank you very much.